Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to this live stream question and answer session. We're going to have a talk about getting geared up for fishing in the springtime. Hopefully, this will be the first of quite a lot of these live streams. I'm hoping to bring you one every month, ideally on the first Tuesday of the month. That's when our Fishotopian newsletter goes out. Now, I know that a lot of you have probably already subscribed to the Fishotopian newsletter. If you don't, make sure you jump onto fishotopia.com. You can either go to .com or .com.au and get onto Fishotopia, and you'll find the sign up for the newsletter up in the top right corner of the home page. It's well worth getting on there and getting that every month. Apart from anything else, it'll let me tell you what's coming up in the next live stream. A little bit of housekeeping first and a little bit of news to get through. I wanted to tell you about a couple of things that I've got happening. Some of you will know that I've been working on some courses, setting up some online courses, and the first one of those, the soft plastic mastery course, has actually been up for, it must be nearly a year now, and I think we've actually got some people on tonight who are graduates of the soft plastic mastery course. Everyone seems to have loved it so far, and we've got a private Facebook group as well that spun off from that course. So if you're interested in getting into that, you'll find how to do that on Fishotopia as well. The other one that I'm working on, and I've been working on all of this year so far, in fact, I started late last year working on putting together my STARLO'S secrets for fishing Sydney Harbour, and that drops in early December. But we've had an early birds program where you can sign up early, get it for half price, which is like $19.50, so it's cheap as chips. And by signing up early, you also go in the running for this prize package. We've been lucky enough to have 4 of these Shimano and Mako eyewear prize packs to give away, and we've given 2 away. We just drew one the other day. Here's the lucky winners: Paul Butterfield on the left there, and Nicholas Kaludis there on the right, who was our most recent winner. So we've still got 2 of those packs to give away. If you're a Sydney Harbour fisherman or you would like to become one, it's well worth signing up as an early bird to that one. The other thing I wanted to mention, I love the Pertec comp. A lot of you'll know that I fish the Pertec Challenge every year, and I often do a video about my efforts in the Pertec. Well, the people behind the Pertec, Jonathan Bleakley and Guesty, have got another comp going now called Fish Reflections. Now, unfortunately, this one's only for fishing in New South Wales waters. Doesn't mean you've got to be from New South Wales. You can cross the border and fish this one, but it's only in New South Wales waters. And it's on the 27th and 28th of September, so not too far away. And it sounds like being a fantastic comp. I've already signed up for it and paid my entry fee, and I know my wife Jo is about to do the same thing. And we'll fish it across the weekend of the 27th and 28th. There's a dozen different target species that you can go out and chase in New South Wales waters, and then upload up to 5 photos of 5 different species at the end of the weekend. There's $80,000 worth of prizes, and you don't even have to catch a fish. They're giving this boat, motor and trailer package away just as a lucky draw for anyone that enters the competition. So have a think about getting involved in that one. There's the URL down the bottom there, fishreflections.com.au. Jump on and have a look and see if you're interested. If you do fish it, I'd love to have a talk to you in the next live stream that we do in early October and see what you thought of the comp and how you went and how you tackled it. So yeah, that one's well worth having a look at. All right, let's dive into it and start talking about spring. And I'm excited. Jo and I are heading off to Lake Windermere this Thursday. Jo's running one of her Women's Recreational Fishing League competitions up there, one of their X Factor comps this coming weekend. Now, I think we're about a month too early. The water's still pretty cold, and I don't know if the big fat yellowbelly like that will be on mature yet, but I certainly hope I can rustle up a couple of them. I'm obviously not competing in the competition because it's a women's comp, but I'm going to have a fish off the bank actually while the girls are out in the boat, and I'm hopefully going to be able to pinch the boat and get out for a day before the comp actually starts and go and target some of those big yellows. That's one of the things that spring means for me, is big yellow belly up at Windermere. There's Jo with a big one there. The other thing that I really look forward to in the next couple of months is the dusky flathead. Down here on the far south coast of New South Wales where I live, the duskies don't really fire up the big ones down in the lower reaches of the estuary until probably November, but I've already started finding a few up the back in some of the shallow areas, and I do love chasing my big flatties, particularly in skinny water. The other thing, of course, and someone's already said, the bass are already firing up, and you're absolutely right. I love my bass fishing in spring. I particularly like actually from about now, although it's been pretty chilly lately and they haven't really fired up yet down here, but in the next couple of weeks they will. And from now through until Christmas, really, I think I have my best bass fishing. And then after that, particularly if there's a bit of flow in the river, they tend to head further upstream and spread out. But when they're still coming up from the tidal water after being down, hopefully spawning, and this year should have been a good year for spawning, it's a great time to chase bass. Hi from Europe. I've got to put that one up on screen. That is fantastic. Euros. Hi, Euros. That's fantastic that you've tuned in from Europe. We've got followers from all over the place. Blackfish, that's another one, Luderick, that I really look forward to in the springtime. Down here, October, November seem to be really, really good months for big blackfish in the estuaries. It happens a little bit earlier further north, but I do love chasing my blackfish. But right now, the water's probably at about its coldest for the year in the estuaries. So at this time of the year, I think you need to look for the slightly warmer areas. And I just did a YouTube video about that called Cold Water Secrets, and you can jump on and have a look at that. It just went up in the last few days and people are really enjoying it. That printout on the right of your screen there is a giveaway PDF that I've linked to that video if you want to get hold of it, just talking about 5 keys to catching fish in really cold water. All right, let's dive in and take some of your questions. Someone was asking about the best lures for big flathead in the springtime. I really like targeting the big female flathead in super shallow water across the next couple of months. So I tend to use a lot of large, lightly weighted or unweighted soft plastics up in the shallows, but big hard bodies can also be good. Big swim baits, the Murray cod style swim baits, can be really, really good on the big flatties. But what I don't like about them is you need fairly heavy tackle to cast them, and I don't think you need heavy tackle to catch even 90 centimetre plus flathead. So I prefer to throw somewhat lighter lures like the big soft plastics. In that soft plastics mastery course that I mentioned earlier, I actually talk about rigging those big soft plastics. I've made a few videos about that, and some of you will have seen those for sure. Tripper wants to know if I'm planning on fishing Sydney during the spring. Yeah, you better believe it. The one species that's eluded me so far in Sydney Harbour, we've done pretty well in Sydney Harbour, and the fishing up there is exceptionally good, but I haven't caught a mulloway yet out of Sydney Harbour, and that's on my wish list. With the prediction of a wet spring for the Sydney region, what tips do you have fishing the salt water when there's a lot of fresh flushing through it? That's a great question from Trent, and it has been a real issue, and I know it's been particularly an issue for people up on the north coast of New South Wales. There just seems to be one flood event after another up there, and the rivers are just not clearing up between them, and it makes things really hard. We've had a fair bit of rain down here, but nothing like they've had up there. All I can really say is when it's like that, you've got to go down closer towards the entrances of the systems and concentrate on the incoming tide, which will push some cleaner water in from the ocean. That's probably about the best thing you can do when it's filthy dirty. Use bright coloured lures, use noisy lures with rattles, things like that. That really helps. Bit of scent on your lures doesn't hurt. And also just going back to bait doesn't hurt either. You know, you can't always catch them on lures when it's as dirty as it has been up on the north coast in particular. Mentioning you're going to fish for yellowbelly from the shore, what's your approach to finding them from the edge of the lake? Question from Tom Robertson. That's a beauty. When I first started chasing yellows at Windermere, we only fished from off the bank. We had boats, but we used to drive around, pull the boat ashore, get out, and then fish off the bank. And we used to throw floating diving hard-bodied lures, the old deception shrimp in particular, crank them down, bring them in. And the nice thing about those was you could pause them and let them float up over the weed beds. That was a really, really effective way for targeting yellows off the bank. I don't do it as much anymore, but I'm looking forward to getting back into it. So you really need to think about the fact that when you're fishing from the bank, you're casting out into deeper water and bringing your lure back into the shallows. It's the exact opposite of when you're boat fishing and you're casting in towards the bank and bringing your lure out. So when you're out in the boat and you're casting towards the bank, it's good to use sinking lures, things like Eco Gear ZXs and Jackal Mask Vibes. They're some of my favourite lures when I'm in the boat, but they're not so good when you're on the bank because they're getting at their deepest right when you want them to be coming up over that weed bed and not shoveling through the mud. So I tend to go back to the floating divers when I'm on the bank, crank them down, and then let them float up as they come in closer. Item 4 of my cold water secrets. Yeah, go light. Definitely a bit of finesse can pay off when the water's colder. I mean, I think it pays off all the time, but going a little bit lighter in your main line, a little bit skinnier in your leaders, and just fishing that little bit lighter. Let's put this one up. What are you most excited to start fishing for again as the weather warms up? Yeah, so I rattled off a few different species there. If I had to pick just one, it's got to be bass. I've got a real soft spot for Australian bass. I probably look forward to that more than anything else. Bass season opens on the 1st of September, and I usually go out in the first week. I haven't been out yet, and I'm nearly always too early. I go up my river here on the far south coast of New South Wales, and it's usually still really cold and no life. And funnily enough, you go 2 or 3 weeks later, and there's mullet there, and things have started to liven up, and I start to catch a few fish. But yeah, I really, really do look forward to my bass fishing every year. What's your favourite green weed to use for blackfish and drummer? Believe it or not, if I could only use one weed on both the rocks and in the estuary for blackfish and drummer, it's cabbage off the rocks. I mean, blackfish fishermen, luderick anglers are renowned for being really secretive about where they get their greenweed from. They sneak up into the backwaters of the rivers and get their greenweed. I just reckon the cabbage off the rocks is as good as anything. And what I tend to find in the estuaries is you don't get as many bites on cabbage, but they tend to be bigger fish. When I use greenweed, the stringweed, I tend to get a lot of little ones, and a lot of those pickers that just keep pulling the float down and letting it go. It's really annoying. Put a bit of cabbage on, you don't get anywhere near as many bites, but when you do, they're often a bigger fish. What's this one? Early season flathead. Afternoons versus mornings, retrieve speed, slower, longer pauses. Great questions, Gus. I think tide is really important. What I've found in this early part of spring and then on towards October, November with the big flatties down in the mouth of the river. I like the last hour of the run, last 2 hours of the run out. It's always a great time for flathead. But I love that first 45 minutes of the incoming tide when the new tide starts to push in. And what it does is it pushes the discoloured estuarine water back into the estuary. And I don't know, there's just something about that just before the really clean oceanic stuff gets to the fish, when it's pushing that estuary water that's gone out through the mouth and then gets pushed back in again. I really like that. So I don't really care whether that's first thing in the morning, middle of the day, late in the afternoon. The good thing about first thing in the morning, though, is that no one else has been there. You haven't got boats buzzing over the shallows and, kids and dogs splashing around. So if I can time that first flush of the incoming tide for the first 2 hours of light for the next couple of months, that's what I'll be looking at. So check that out. Let's have a look at this one from my good mate Lee at Arc Genesis Jigs. What are your thoughts about salmon dropping off north of Sydney? Do you think that it's due to changes in water temperature? Well, I think it's due to two things. Yeah, definitely changes in water temperature. Also, they do get hammered a bit by the netters further north. I know that some of the fishing guides have told me that Sydney Harbour has been not good at all for salmon in the last couple of years. They were a really reliable fish for many, many years, and they've been a lot less reliable and in smaller numbers the last few years, and yet we've had excellent runs of them down here on the far south coast. So it's hard to know exactly what's going on, but I do think they're getting flogged by the netters a bit further north, and I do also think that warmer water is holding them back a little bit, and they don't tend to run up to the north. I mean, they used to get caught up on the Gold Coast, and they still do occasionally. What's this one? I've seen a guy using blackfish unweighted for jewfish. Most of the jewies that I've kept over the years, and I've caught my fair share of mulloway or jewfish, and I've let plenty go, but I've also kept plenty because I like eating them. The most common thing I've found in their stomach are juvenile luderick, about between sort of 10 and 15 centimetres in length. They do love a little luderick or blackfish. You can't use them that small for live bait because they're undersized, but they do love a blackfish. And I know some of the old timers used to swear by using the head of a blackfish or the head and wings of a blackfish as a bait. Here's another one. If you're coming back to Tassie, give Muscle Row Bay a go, similar to Anson's, but I reckon it's better. It's funnily enough, Muscle Row's been on my list to get up there, and I nearly got there the last time I was down, but I heard some horror stories about what the road was like. It kind of put me off towing my boat in there, but I would love to check it out. Port Hacking's been overflowing with salmon this winter. Well, that's good to know. And I understand they've got up to Lake Macquarie too. So that's good because that's a pretty good fishery. Les Fredericks, what would be your favourite setup for mid to large size flathead? So tackle-wise, I like about a 3,000 size reel. 2,500s are fine. 3,000s hold a little bit more line, which you don't need for the flatties. But if you happen to hook a dewy while you're fishing for flatties, it's nice to have that bit of extra line. So 3,000 or 4,000 size reel on a sort of mid-spin rod. And I've always been a fan of longer than normal rods. I like my 7.5 foot mid-spin rods. I fish braid 99% of the time, so I normally run 10 or 15 pound braid as my main line when I'm chasing the big flatties. And my leader setup's a little bit different to a lot of people. I don't like a big thick leader going through the guides when I'm casting, so I tend to run I use 16 pound Osea fluorocarbon a lot of times as my main lure, my main leader, and then I'll put about just 20 or 30 centimetres of, say, 20 or 25 pound fluorocarbon at the end. I call it a shock tippet, so carry over from fly fishing terminology, just that little bit at the end so you don't get chewed off, but that's not going through the guides. You can use a little ring or a swivel to attach that if you like. I normally use an Albright knot to connect it to the 16 pound, but that's my way of rigging up for the flatties and the gear that I like. One Up Fishing wants to know, grubtail lures rigged with the tail curve up or down, and why? And this one comes up a fair bit, and I'll run a photo of a rig and people will go, oh, you rigged it with the tail up or you rigged it with the tail down. I honestly don't think it makes any difference, because when you're retrieving that lure, that tail straightens out behind the lure and wriggles. On the drop, it wriggles as well. So it's very rarely in that position that you see it in when you rig it up. So I don't really have a particular preference. I do tend to rig it up more than down, but I don't think it makes any difference at all. Top 5 bass lures in the springtime in the river in my area. The last probably 6 or 7 years, I've become a real fan of chatterbaits, bladed jigs. Apparently we're not allowed to call them chatterbaits. That belongs to one company, and they get a bit upset if other people call their lures chatterbaits. But bladed jigs, you know the things I mean, lead head, and they've got a blade in the front, and they give you great feedback through the rod. I rig them with a soft plastic trailer, and I fish them 3 different stages during the retrieve. When they land close to the snag or the structure on the drop, you get a lot of bites on the drop, so be aware of that. Then when they hit the bottom, I jig them a couple of times, and then I just go into a medium-paced slow roll like you would with a spinnerbait, and I get fish on all 3 stages of those retrieves. So if I can only use one lure for the next 3 months on bass, it'd be chatterbaits. But I love my surface lure fishing, and I'll start surface luring quite early in the season these days. And any of the surface lures, I like the old stuff, the old jitterbugs and crazy crawlers and stuff like that. I still throw those, but I'll tell you one that you got to try is the whopper plopper. I think Riveter Sea made the original one. The whopper plopper is just a fantastic lure to fish. You can just fish it on a steady, slow retrieve, and that tail goes ploppity, ploppity, plop, and the fish absolutely love it. I got my PB estuary perch on one a couple of years ago, and I caught some really nice bass on them as well. Tim wants to know which fishery is the most improved over the last few decades. Well, definitely the impoundment fisheries, the stocked impoundments, particularly the barramundi fisheries up north, but also I think some of our native fisheries down here in the southern latitudes as well, particularly the bass and the yellowbelly and the Murray cod. Murray cod overall have really improved. Gosh, when I was a young bloke, it was really hard to catch a cod out in the western rivers, and they've made a bit of a comeback. I mean, we've seen all the bad news stories about the fish kills and everything, and that's been terrible. But Murray cod have bounced back in a lot of the rivers and the dams, so that's been a big improvement. On the saltwater front, flathead. I think the fact that a lot of people now choose to let go the big flathead makes a huge difference to their numbers, and I think they're in pretty good shape, the populations of flatties. Now, I'm not going to be able to get to everyone's questions because there's a lot coming in. Looking to get into squid fishing, what's some tips, tricks and techniques? Yeah, I love my squid fishing. Probably not as much as my wife Jo does, though. She is absolutely nuts about squid fishing and nuts about eating calamari. I don't think I've ever been able to stop her on the calamari front. She just keeps eating it. Look, early morning, late afternoon, broken bottom, weed, kelp, 2 to 5 metres deep, you're going to find squid. But they seem to, if you find them in a particular spot, they'll be there again and again. They just seem to be creatures of habit, and they'll return to the same spots. I actually did a YouTube video on best secrets for catching squid. It's a couple of years old now, so you'll need to go through my back catalogue. Can you catch squid in estuaries? You sure can, some more so than others. Funnily enough, here where I live, Turos, I've never caught one in the Turos estuary, and yet you go down to Wagga Inlet, not that much further south, and you get them in the estuaries on a reasonably regular basis. Seems to be more the clean water estuaries that get plenty of flush from the ocean. A lot of saltwater input on the incoming tide, but certainly Botany Bay, Port Hacking, Sydney Harbour, you catch plenty of squid. Mullet YouTube video is one of your most popular. Do you have any tips to avoid the bycatch when you're mullet fishing? Yeah, biggest tip is don't fish too deep under the float. Those brim that tend to climb on, then more when you get the bait down, 30, 40, 50 centimetres under the float. I've taken to just fishing at 10 or 12 centimetres under the float. That's where you tend to catch more mullet and garfish in particular. Enjoying fishing light for many reasons, but BFS bait casting, is it really better as opposed to spin? Definitely not better, just different and challenging. I still think that spin gear is far more versatile. If it's windy, if you're casting super lightweights or whatever, you're far better off with spin. But I've been loving my BFS. I just love bait casters. I've always loved bait casters, and I love catching barra and Murray cod on them when you're throwing nice big lures, but being able to throw lighter and lighter lures on the BFS has opened it up a bit. But I would certainly never argue that it's more efficient than spin gear. What are the best soft plastic lures for dew fishing and why? If I could only use one soft plastic lure for dewies for the rest of my life, it would be the 100mm squidgy fish in black gold. I've caught more dewies on that one than anything else. Second after that would be exactly the same lure, 100mm squidgy fish, but in the silver fox, which is the sort of black on the back, silvery sides. I just think that size tallies really well with what they eat a lot of. As I said before, they eat a lot of little luderick. You have a look at a 100mm black gold squidgy fish wigged on a jig head, it's not too dissimilar to a little luderick. So that'd be my absolute go-to lure. I've caught them on all kinds of things. I've caught them on tiny little brim lures. I've caught them on big stuff, but that 100mm squidgy fish, very, very hard to beat. Donna wants to know, she's heading down to Lake Conjola to hunt flathead. Any advice for this time of year? Shallow water. The shallows warm up quicker than the deeper water. They're right up in the shallows at the moment, but not down the front of the estuary so much. They're in the backwaters and the little sort of side bays and the little inlets that come off the main estuary. Get right back in there. Back lake, I think they call it at Conjola. They'll be back in there, right up in the shallows. Don't be afraid to go into knee deep and less water and throw lures for them back in there. Going to Wallaga in a couple of weeks. What should I target at this time of year? Yeah, in a couple of weeks, definitely flatties. Wallaga is always good for brim, both yellowfin and black brim, and you're a good chance of getting amongst some silver trevally down there this time of year as well. Techniques new or specific, people that are looking to start or do more of. It's hard to say what's new, really. Everything new, someone will say, I was doing that 30, 40 years ago, and in a lot of cases they're absolutely right. But it's the same with the BFS. People say, I was using a 1500 Abu on a little soft fiberglass rod 40 years ago, and that's absolutely true, but it was a small group of people that were doing it. These days, a lot more people are getting into the BFS, just like a lot more people are getting into soft plastics. I've been really enjoying getting back into hard bodies. Being one of the co-creators of Squidgies, I fished soft plastics almost exclusively for nearly 20 years, and I love it. And I still love my soft plastic fishing, but gee, I love throwing a hard body around these days. I just love the way fish crunch a hard body. There's something different about the way they strike a hard-bodied lure, and I've been getting right back into that. Can yellowfin brim and flathead live in completely fresh water? Because my son caught 5 yellowfin brim and a 45-centimetre flathead in the upper reaches of Casino, New South Wales. I catch flathead every year while I'm chasing bass up in water above 2 or 3 sets of rapids that you can scoop a handful out and drink it. It's perfectly drinkable fresh water. So, yeah, absolutely. Most fish can transition into fresh water. Blackfish are another one, luderick, that I've seen right up into the fresh. And apparently even mulloway can go right up into fresh water at times. Whether they choose to or not is sort of up to the fish. But, yeah, definitely brim and flatties, they're quite happy to go into that sort of water. What have we got here from Sonny? Hey, Steve, just wondering what live bait you used to get your marlin off the rocks back in the day, and what ledge was it on? Because I'm so curious. It was the tubes, the outer tubes inside Jervis Bay, and it was on a little yakka, a little yellowtail. We actually caught our yellowtail that morning. I was fishing with a guy who was in the Navy, so we were able to get into Creswell Naval Base and fish off the wharf there. We caught our live baits in the dark, like 3 o'clock in the morning, transported them all the way around because they'd been hard to catch at the tubes, and carried them in a bucket. There was a little yakka about that big that I got my marlin off the rocks on. Been reading your stuff since I was a child. Thanks for your inspiration and knowledge. Thank you. Thank you, Sonny. What lures or soft plastics should I use for carp? Fishing in the Reflections Comp in September. Yeah, carp love little soft plastics. Little pink ones and white ones in particular I've done best on squidgy wriggler, but, keep them fairly small, the smallest sizes. And the whole thing with carp, if you can see them, it's much, much easier to catch them. Put that soft plastic a metre or so in front of them, let it drop to the bottom. Don't fish it on too heavy a jig head. Let it get on the bottom and just give it a couple of shakes and wriggles. And 9 times out of 10, they'll just come straight over and vacuum it up off the bottom. And you've got to set the hook. You've got to see them take it and set the hook. Blind fishing for them with lures is a little bit harder. Around Bathurst, yeah, so you'll probably be able to see them. Bass season has not long started. For some reason, it seems a bit slower going this year. Any reason you can think of? Absolutely, the cold weather. This has been the coldest winter I can remember down here on the far south coast. I'm not sure where you are, Jesus. Let me know where you're fishing, but I think it is going to be a slow start to the bass season this year just because of how cold it's been and the fact that the water here in the estuary was still only, about 13 or 14 degrees only a week or so ago, and I really like to see it get up to that 16, 17. But having said that, in some of the backwaters the other day when I was chasing those flathead, I found some 17-degree water, and that's where the flatties were, and that's where they were willing to take a lure. So if you can find that slightly warmer stuff, makes a big difference. Josh, what's your thoughts on trout fishing Gloucester tops? I've never fished that Gloucester country. I've heard lots about it. Should be good early season, as soon as the season opens. The problem with that part of the world is it can warm up pretty quickly and get a little bit too hot to be comfortable for the trout. So get into it early in the season, chuck little spinners and little hard bodies, and you should be able to find some. My pastime waiting for the bite window for the bass is to switch to targeting carp on tiny soft plastics, stalking carp along it's good fun. I mean, I hate the damn things, and everyone that I catch is a dead carp. They all get knocked on the head, but they are good fun to catch, and especially when you can sight fish for them. Hey, Starl, have you ever fished any part of the Clarence River? That's where I'm currently based at. Yeah, I sure have. I've fished a lot of the Clarence. I've fished the lower Clarence a lot with my good mate Paul Neller. He lives down near Maclean, and I've fished down that area a lot with him, but I've also fished up in the gorge and below the gorge, and I've fished up above as well for eastern cod and bass. I love the Clarence. Been running pretty dirty this year. Gee, they've just had so much rain up there. Tim wants to know which of the new products at AFTA this year appealed to me the most. Well, I was pretty excited about the fact that there's 4 new squidgies, or 2 old ones are back. The bug and the lobby are back, and there's 2 new ones, the glimmer and the grub. So I was pretty excited about that. That little prawn that Nomad, is it Nomad that are doing the little prawn? That looks pretty deadly too. So I was quite impressed with those. Wayne says he caught a carp on a Vibrax lure. I'd believe it. When I lived out in Burke, way back at the beginning of the 1980s, I used to catch them on the old number 4 Celta. And what I'd do was walk along the bank until I saw one right up with its back out of the water. The water's very rarely clear out there, but when they stuck their tails and backs out of the water, you could see where they were. And I'd go and drop the Celta right on their nose and just jiggle it up and down, and they'd happily eat that. So, we've got a viewer watching from New Zealand. Welcome aboard. Do a session with the older tack lures for your big brim. Yeah, I've still got it. I've still got half a dozen at least older tacks in my tackle box. I should pull them out and give them a go. They were really the lure that started it all for Bushy and I with the brim on lures. We got really serious about catching them on the older tacks, and I'm sure they still work just as well as they ever did. Anton wants to know if Shimano are going to bring out another range of T-Curve premiums. Yeah, I love the T-Curve premium, and there's none in their range at the moment. They've just got the standard T-Curves, but I've been having a word to them about that as well. I would really like to see another range of the premiums. PD wants to know, and this is a question for Lee from Arc Genesis, will we see a slightly heavier jig head soon? I won't steal Lee's thunder. I'm sure he'll come back in with a comment on that. But yes, I've been saying exactly the same thing to him. We need some heavier ones, some half ounce, some 3/4, ideally some 1 ounce. There's a lot of snapper fishermen out there that would love to have those strong hooks and that tungsten alloy based head. Yeah, Donna, the Clarence Gorge is absolutely gorgeous. Thoughts on the Shimano Asenza? Just bought one 2 to 4 kilo on the Jews and Flathead. I'm loving my Asenzas. I've got 2 of them, and I'm really, really enjoying using both of them. They're quite a fast taper rod, quite light in the tip, and got a fair bit of beef further down. So yeah, I really like them. I'm going to wet my whistle. I've got a little Scotch on ice here, which I'm drinking out of a lovely glass that my wife, Jo, brought me back from her recent trip to the US with a trout on it. How cool is that? All right. Tom, opinion on the updated Maikuro and Naski rods and reels. They're looking like an excellent budget option. I haven't had a play with any of them yet, but I've put my hand up for one of the new Naski reels as soon as they become available. They look like excellent bang for your buck. The value for your dollar on those is just amazing. I had one of the old Naskis and I haven't been able to kill it. I've still got it. It's my lender reel now. When someone comes fishing with me, it's the reel that I give to them, but it's still really smooth, and they're a surprisingly good reel for their price. Bucket list fish that you haven't caught but want to catch? Not too many left on my bucket list. Probably the one big regret is that I never got over to the US to fish for one of those big tarpon. I would have loved to have caught 100-pound tarpon, ideally on fly, but I'd be happy to catch it on anything. But my days of long-haul travel are behind me. I'm so over long flights and airports and all the rest of it. I don't think I'll ever go over there to get one. So no, I really nothing much left on my bucket list now, which is a nice thing to be able to say. But hey, Starlo, I noticed you've been using the Vanford reels a lot. How do you rate them? I absolutely love my Vanfords. Yeah, I use them a lot. I've got a 500, a 1,000, a 2,500, and a 3,000 Vanford, and I use them all regularly. Probably use them more than anything else. The addition of the 500 size is looking very appealing in the Naski. Yeah, I noticed that they're bringing out a 500, and that look, the 500's a tiny reel. It's a bit of a toy, but I do love it. Walking trout streams with a little 6-foot flick stick and that 500. Really, really good. Okay, Lee from Arc Genesis has come back with an answer for PD. Yes, many sizes up to 1 ounce will be launched in about 2 weeks, with hook sizes up to 7.0. Wow. And the large tournament pro mould will be completed around the end of the month. So there you go. We'll see some bigger ones coming through for sure. How many rods and reels do you have that you use regularly? Probably not as many as you might think. I've got about 6 or 8 outfits that I use on a regular basis. That I got a couple of beach and rock outfits. I got a couple of estuary outfits. I got a Murray cod outfit, which also doubles for barra and stuff like that. Are garfish worth chasing at this time of year on the south coast? I would have said no, but when I was up the river a couple of weeks ago, they were getting chased by the salmon, and some nice garies too. Normally I regard them as a summertime thing around here, and yet having said that, they get some of the biggest ones of the year off the rocks down around Tartara and that further south from here at about this time of year. So I don't know, go out, put some burley in and see what happens. What's a cheaper alternative to the Vanford? That Naski, definitely. The other thing is the Siennas. I did a review on the Siennas a fair while ago now, and they're quite a cheap reel, and they're really, really good value. What's your favourite Scotch? Two very different questions. My favourite Scotch Glenmorangie, or Glenmorangie, however you want to pronounce it. I love the old Glenmorangie, but I'm just drinking a Jameson's Irish whiskey today. Don't mind if I do. That one goes down pretty easily. Do I know when the Shimano BFS rods will be in stores? Yes, by the end of October, I've been told. What are we? Beginning September now, so you've still got nearly 2 months to wait, unfortunately. There's only a couple of samples in the country so far. New RTS to BFS, have you had a chance to fish with one yet? No, I haven't. I'll be letting you know when I do that. 2 weeks for the Atlas Stone Series, end of the month for the Tournament Pro from Lee at Arc Genesis. Thoughts on lighter or heavier jig head sizes? For everything except flathead, my advice is go as light as you can get away with. Flathead, it's not so important. It's more important that you've got your plastic down near the bottom with flathead, so using a heavier jig head can be a real advantage with the flatties. But on nearly everything else, the lightest that you can get away with for the prevailing conditions, I tend to find that you catch more fish. But make sure that it's still heavy enough to make that soft plastic tail swim on the drop. Test it in the water next to the boat or next to the bank and make sure that when you let it sink, the tail actually wriggles or kicks. Sometimes if you go too light on the jig head, it'll do what I call the death spiral. It'll just do that as it sinks and the tail won't swim. So you want just enough weight to make the tail swim on the drop, and then the lighter the jig head you can get away with, the better hang time you've got, longer in their sight window, especially on things like brim, snapper, offshore. You'd be surprised how light I fish for snapper, even out in 30, 40, 50 metres of water. I'll fish a 3/8 of an ounce jig head if it's not too windy and there's not too much current, just so that plastic spends a lot of time in that bottom third of the water column where the snapper often take it. Seems to be much better than having one that just thumps its way straight to the bottom. Who is the artist for the artwork behind you, Starlo? That's a Japanese-style Gyotaku print of a giant herring that my son Tom caught, and it was done for me by Captain Greg Bethune from Carpentaria Seafaries. Greg became very, very good at doing those Gyotaku prints. You actually put ink on the fish, the actual real fish, and you lay rice paper over it and then peel it off, and you end up with a Japanese-style print like that one up there. I've got a few of them on the walls around the place. You might just be able to see a pike up here. That's a Canadian pike, an actual skin mount. In future live streams, I'll pull a few of my other fish in here and put them on the wall. Matt says, love the content, Starlo, doing great things. The T-curve medium light you put up against the Anarchy rod, will that suit fishing for salmon as well, using metal slices, etc.? Absolutely, Matt. You'll love it. Scott, what's the smallest size spin reel I can realistically use on barramundi? Well, theoretically, I reckon you could catch a barra on a 500 spin reel, but it wouldn't be ideal. 2500 would be as small as I would normally go for barra, and I'd probably rather go for a 3000. I love Shimano's odd sizes in between, the 3000 and the 5000. Basically what a 3000 is a 2500 with a deeper spool, and a 5000 is their 4000 reel with a deeper spool. I like that ability to have a little bit more line on the spool, just in case you do hook something a little bit bigger. Have you seen the weight distribution for the new Nomad soft plastic range? Is it worth trying to replicate? I haven't actually, no. I'll have a look at that. How many fish species have you caught? That's an interesting question. I should sit down one day and try and work it out, but it's a heck of a lot. And I've been fortunate enough to fish a lot of other countries and fairly widely around the world in my younger years. So I caught some pretty weird and wonderful stuff, but it'd be up in the hundreds. How does the Sienna reel compare to the Sedona? I think the Sedona is slightly more expensive, but there's not a lot of difference in them. Probably one set of ball bearings. And that's what it usually tends to come down to in the Shimanos. The price is usually about how many sets of bearings they have. Speaking of rods, is there any chance of a Starlo Ian Miller collab in the near future? I'm still using a Starlo Sticks rod in 2025, favourite rod for me. I've still got a few of the old Starlo sticks as well, don't you worry. A couple of the old Jungle sticks and a few of the others. We made some damn good rods for Shimano. Unfortunately, when their ownership switched over to being 100% Japanese controlled, they just don't do anything with people's signatures on it. They don't want anything other than Shimano, which is fair enough. That's very much the Japanese corporate way of doing things. And Ian and I no longer get to design rods for them, unfortunately, which it was a great gig. And we really enjoyed designing those rods, and I meet people all the time that are still using them. One of my favourite segments on the Rex Hunt Show was you in the jungle of the Solomon Islands going to the tackle shop, making some fishing line with the vines. Yes, I remember that. The local guy who guided us was amazing. And he was pulling these long, skinny vines down out of the foliage and showing us how they plaited them together and made fishing lines out of them. That was quite a trip, that one. And Bushy caught a monster mangrove jack on that. We heard rumours that there were black bass, Papuan black bass in a couple of the rivers there, and there are, I think, further north in the island chain from where we were. We didn't end up catching one, but Bushy caught an absolute thumper of a mangrove jack. Do you ever clean up on the Barra with Waddy and Darwin? Yeah, well, I don't know about clean up, but we always managed to catch a few. And I had a good trip up there with him just a couple of weeks ago, playing around with the BFS gear and stuff. I like the follow-up question, or does he keep his favourite spots to himself? I reckon he probably does. I love fishing with Waddy. As a lot of you all know, he's a full-time fishing guide. He runs barefoot fishing safaris, and I've known Waddy since before he got started in guiding. In fact, he hadn't been long in the territory when I first met him, and he's a terrific bloke, just really, really good company and a great angler. Well, we're coming up to very close to the hour mark, which is what I wanted to keep it down to. I don't want to let these get out of control and run away too much. We've got 85 people on here at the moment, which I'm absolutely stoked with. Thank you so much. What's fishing for adventure? Starlo, I love your stuff. What are you most looking forward to for spring? The bass. Definitely the bass, and I hope I can catch one of those big yellow belly at Windermere next week as well, and I'll let you know. Let me know if you want to continue with these live streams, and we'll do another one next month. As I said, I want to try and do one on the first Tuesday of every month to coincide with when our Fishertopia newsletter goes out. Laurie Kirk. G'day, Laurie. Been a long time. Great to see that you're enjoying Churros and Coila Beach. Keep up those short tutorials. Yeah, I've been doing those 2-minute tips and things on. I'm absolutely loving YouTube, I've got to tell you. I grew up with the written word, writing articles for magazines, writing books. I've written over 20 books and goodness knows how many thousand magazine articles, and no one seems to read much anymore, and there aren't too many magazines left. But these days, I'm doing my storytelling and my communicating through YouTube, and I'm really, really, I don't want to let that one go. Stellar or Twin Power? Buy the Twin Power. Save a few bucks. Don't tell Shimano I told you that, but the Twin Powers are a fantastic reel, and with the money you save, you can buy a nice rod. Speaking of the Rex Hunt Show, one of my favourites was shark wrangling in the Northern Territory. How about the same in Lake Conjola? Oh, I don't know, yeah. Sounds great. Love the live streams. Please keep them coming. Thanks, Donna. Love it. Scrolling through YouTube tonight and just lucked in on the live. Good stuff. Well, you'll know where to look for them in future. Saw a YouTube fisherman catching bass in the Maribyrnong River in Victoria, yeah. I don't think they're native to there. Estuary perch are, but I think the bass might have been liberated in there. What's your all-round bass fishing lure? Those chatterbaits I was talking about earlier. There's an Australian company, Hell Yeah Chatterbaits. I got onto them a couple of years ago. I've been using a lot of their chatterbaits, but or bladed jigs, we've got to call them. They're really, really good, but so are some of the jackal ones. Are a bit expensive, but they are a great lure. Yeah, really good all-round lure. I love lures that you can fish all the way from virtually the surface to the bottom in the deepest holes, and chatterbaits are really, really good for that. All right, 2 minutes to the hour, so we're going to start wrapping it up. And PD says, please keep the live streams coming. Love it. Been a fan for years. So keen for more. Well done. Thanks, mate. And wow, we finished with 90 people watching at the 1 hour and 1 minute mark. Thank you so much. What's my favourite lure for yellowbelly? Ooh, that's changed a fair bit over the years. If I only had one lure for yellowbelly now, it would be the little black and red Eco Gear ZX Vibe. Great lure. Great lure. All right. I'm going to bid you all farewell and catch you on the first Tuesday of next month. This one will be up. I might edit it a little bit and get rid of some of my stumbles, and it'll be up on YouTube for you to have a look at. Thank you all for supporting me on YouTube. I know a lot of you watch my my efforts on there. I really enjoy your feedback. I try and answer everyone who comments on one of my YouTube videos. It's not always easy, but I do give it my best shot. Okay, until we catch up next month, this is Starlo wishing you tight lines. Get out there and enjoy spring.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.